There's been a bit of discussion going on lately about the Sonic the Hedgehog series, mainly about how it's so awful that people are convinced there have been literally no good games starring the blue blur. Really? I mean, yes, the series does have its problems with retaining a consistent level of quality and gameplay direction, but that doesn't mean it's never had one good game. If you need proof, and the Mega Drive classics somehow don't do it for you, look no further than the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Sega Master System and Game Gear. Dismissed by some for being an inferior clone of the original, 8-bit Sonic is not just a cracking good game that I think deserves more attention than it gets, but I'd even argue that it's one of the best introductions into the games and how they work. Because for all that's good about the Sonic series, and there's a butt ton of that, don't let the internet convince you otherwise, one of its biggest faults is how easy it is to misinterpret the gameplay mechanics and what made the series work. It doesn't matter if you're a hardcore fan or a newcomer wondering what all the fuss is about, it still happens. So then, why is it so easy to miss the point? And how does 8-bit Sonic fix that mess? One word, fellow viewers: speed. Speed is the word that has defined Sonic for 25 years. Back in the day, Sega went on and on about how Sonic was so much faster than every other game of its day thanks to the power of blast processing. He outran his comparatively pedestrian rival Mario as to make him look as lightning quick as paint drying in slow motion. The blistering speed is something fans came to clamor for and adored in games like the Sonic Rush games, the Boost trilogy of Sonic Unleashed, Colors, and Generations, to name a few. He's not called the fastest thing alive because he knows his way around a racetrack better than James May, you know. That was never really what Sonic was about. Based on the level designs for the originals created by Hirokazu Yasuhara, speed was merely the brief cathartic reward you earned for making it past challenging, often slow-paced platforming sections, not the end-all be-all of the gameplay's pure appeal. This was something the best games in the series understood well enough to create some damn fine levels. The Mega Drive classics, Pocket Adventure on the Neo Geo Pocket, Advance 1, Sonic's levels in Adventure 1, and Sonic Generations balance adrenaline with strategy in a way that few games of its ilk could ever hope to do. Unfortunately, that emphasis on speed from the marketing has resulted in a twofold negative impact on the series. For a start, it's led to a good chunk of both fans and detractors believing that there is nothing else to the series but pushing right to conquer a ridiculous rollercoaster course. But even worse is that it subsequently convinced Sega to buy into this myth, and continually promoted over the years with games like Sonic 4, the speed levels in Adventure 2, and basically every DIMPS developed game after Sonic Advance 1. They're still enjoyable in their own right, but they've ramped up the speed to such an extent that whenever there is any platforming, it's completely impossible to predict without being psychic, and it comes off as a cheap nuisance more than anything else. Which brings us back to this 8-bit port. How does it solve that problem of focusing too much on speed and balancing it out with platforming? Hardware limitations. While blast processing isn't seen as much more than cheesy 90s marketing these days, there was a bit of truth to it insofar as the game running incredibly well, thanks to the efforts of its extremely talented programmer Yuji Naka. Unfortunately, that power simply couldn't be replicated onto either the much weaker Master System or the Game Gear, and the resulting game ended up being a lot slower and cut down compared to its 16-bit counterpart. There aren't any loop-de-loops, windy pipes, or curved bits to be found. The level design's a bit more standard compared to other Sonics. The renowned pinball physics are only shown off in the bonus stages, which aren't anywhere near as trippy as their Mega Drive counterparts, and the fastest speed you'll ever get up to is in the first level, when there isn't much to do but roll down green hills and fly off slopes into the air. It sounds really boring, I know, but all this actually works in the game's favor. Because neither system could do the same kind of speed seen in the Mega Drive games, 8-bit Sonic is forced to focus more towards the platforming side of things. This results in a lot of level design utilizing the more obscure momentum aspects of Sonic's movement, and a further emphasized need to understand them in order to get through the 6 zones on offer. That last one's especially important since levels tend to change themselves frequently with each zone. The first act will contain a new kind of obstacle like falling platforms in Bridge Zone and underwater sections in Labyrinth Zone, while the second act changes things up by focusing on one aspect of the level to make a new challenge for the player, like being chased by a constantly scrolling screen or having to climb up a waterfall in a completely vertical level. In fact, that's the word to best describe 8-bit Sonic, a challenge. The changing level designs challenge the player to constantly readjust to new settings. The platform-centric nature of the game challenges those comfortable with a super speedy Sonic to think differently, and the bosses will definitely challenge people who have to take these guys out with no rings to be found whatsoever. Obviously, this doesn't always work. Without a way to recover from an unexpected attack or ill-timed jump, having to fight the bosses over and over again when you're one hit away from death makes them come off as frustrating or annoying. Some of the obstacles can be a pain to navigate, like the waterfall level in Jungle Zone, and Labyrinth Zone, as impressive as it was for the time in replicating the shift in physics and movement like the Mega Drive games, is just a pain to slog through. But thanks to the game's relatively slow pace, this allows players to take their time more easily and understand how to approach each new challenge. I'd argue this is a big improvement over the Mega Drive games, since it was a notable enough occurrence to run headfirst into a new obstacle and not get what you were supposed to do before something's gone wrong. Yeah, I know the original games were built to be replayed over and over again, but if you didn't enjoy them the first time around, that's not really worth it. Here, you're given the chance to do that more easily on the first go, and this means that 8-bit Sonic works far more often than it doesn't, and believe me, when it does, it plays like a dream. The frame rate of this game is incredibly smooth, thanks to a minimalist art direction that creates a beautiful little game without bogging down the engine. The controls are very responsive, ensuring that you hit your mark, stop on a dime, and don't suffer from an accidental death. Some of the bosses, despite that one hit point problem, manage to play into the momentum system and force you to think about how Sonic moves and jumps in order to dodge their attacks. And the levels themselves, with their varied designs, are enough of a treat that part of the fun is wondering how to conquer the next set of obstacles. The highlight of the game, at least for me, definitely has to be the scrap brain in the final zones, where the levels are even more complex, the traps and enemies even more deadly, and the boss is even more exciting to fight. In fact, I was on such a high from beating that final boss that I decided to play through the entire game all over again without missing a beat. That's another thing actually, the game is really short, lasting about an hour or so, probably longer if you try to collect the Chaos Emeralds. And I know some people bang on about, oh, I want a longer game, but consider this. A short game full of lots of cool things that does what it needs to do without any filler or padding is much better than a freakishly long monstrosity that should have had at least half of its content cut. Plus, that makes the game even more replayable than it already was, for those still unsure about whether or not they'll get their money's worth. In a nutshell, Sonic 8-bit is just about the best introduction to the Sonic series I can recommend to any newcomers or disillusioned fans from years past. Though some will complain that it's not as fast as the series is generally considered, I'd say that the satisfying challenge, varied level design, beautiful graphics, awesome music by beloved composer Yuzo Koshiro, and just how plain fun it is to move Sonic more than make up for that. If I had to make a recommendation on which version to get, I'd go for the Game Gear version. This is mainly for two reasons. One, it fixes a problem in the aforementioned waterfall level that otherwise would make it a much more frustrating obstacle course than it otherwise need be. And two, it's the version you can legally acquire these days, and for €4 on the Nintendo eShop. Honestly, I don't think I need any other reasons to convince you to give it a shot. Go play it. Play it right now. Seriously. It's €4. Subway sandwiches are more expensive than this game.